Everyone has a career story to share, and in these career stories series, I am loving the people that I get to interview to bring the stories to you. And in today's career stories episode, I've got Andrea Cayuela, who is an amazing person. She's a previous one-on-one client of mine, and I've always known that I would love to share her story. And I know that you're going to take so much from this episode with her. She shares her journey of growing up in Colombia, working in Germany, to now working in Bali, Indonesia. She shares everything about her approach to leadership, strengths that she's building, and the challenges that she's working on overcoming. So I know that there's going to be a lot in here that you're going to be able to take away. I'll do a little introduction of Andrea before we jump into the episode. Andrea is an impact marketer with experience across Australasia, Latin America, and Europe, helping purpose-driven companies clarify and amplify their message to build healthier, more sustainable societies. Andrea helps organizations not only tell their story, but also make smart, values-aligned decisions about how, where, and to whom they communicate it. Whether scaling low-emission solutions, growing sustainable food systems, or forging partnerships in public health, her focus is on marketing that empowers action and reflects the depths of the work behind it. I know that you're going to love this episode. Let's dive on in. Welcome, Andrea. I'm so excited that you're on the Lead with Lead podcast. Thank you for saying yes.
Oh, thank you so much, Tash. I feel so excited and so happy that I am now one of your guests because I am a big fan of the Lead with Less podcast. Really happy to be here today with you.
Oh, I'm really excited. And particularly because you are in the Career Stories series, I know that people really relate to really authentic, down to earth, real stories about what people have navigated, where they're at, and what they're intentionally deciding to do moving forward. So your journey is one that I've really loved. I've really loved what you've created in your career, the steps that you've taken. And I know leadership development and capability growing is a key part of where you are and what you're looking at developing over the next few years. So I'm really excited for what people are going to hear from you. So to start us off, I would love for you to share how you got to where you are. So what are some of the key points in your journey that's led you to this point, and that would be interesting for people to know?
Sure. Okay. I think I could start with Colombia. That's my home country where I grew up and where I was raised. And I remember since I was little, meeting foreigners really blew up my mind because I was like, okay, I have so many questions. How do they perceive us? Where do they come from? And how do people behave there? And I think this curiosity and these questions that I asked myself as a kid and a teenager, it really shaped my journey until today. Started asking, there must be something beyond my own bubble, my own Colombian bubble, and there must be more ways to see the world. And I really want to see that firsthand. And that's what took me on a journey across 7 countries. So I started my career in marketing in Germany. And I also had the opportunity to live in Morocco, in England, in the Netherlands. And now today I am in Indonesia, 18,000 kilometers away from my home. So my journey has really been a mix of the things that I love, one of them being this intercultural aspect of marketing and communications, but then also about impact. So growing up in Colombia, I could see a lot of inequalities that you don't see in many other countries. So I think that developed a certain sensitivity and empathy towards other people that are not necessarily experiencing the same thing that I am. And in one way or another, I have always dedicated my free time and now my full-time job to really trying to improve people's lives. So my journey to Indonesia is now, I think, the culmination of all of these things that make Andrea. And I am now working full-time with entrepreneurs that are in the sustainability and social impact space. And all of them are trying to improve a sustainable development goal. That's the UN framework that tells us as a society, where should we put our energy to really improve and to increase well-being? And there's a lot of areas that we can do that. So my journey from Colombia to Indonesia is this mix of curiosity for cultures and really deep desire to improve in one way or another the world through my marketing and communication skills.
Wow, that is amazing. And what I really loved was when you were talking, everything was focused on people and the environment or cultures. And I really love that because that's such a fundamental part of leadership is in essence people. And that's actually been such a common touch point through every decision that you've made through your whole career journey around what you've chosen to do and what you've chosen to focus on. So given that experience, that journey that's brought you to here, how do you see and approach leadership? So what is your leadership philosophy?
So that's, I think, a philosophy that has been changing a lot throughout time, because at the beginning I always thought leadership is a hierarchical thing. That's also just something coming from my boss, but I am not a leader. Like basically I am just following the rules. And I think that's also has to do a bit with culture again, because Colombia is a more hierarchical society. But when I lived in Germany, where there's practically no hierarchy, like we're all talking to each other, I think it changed. And now I think everyone can be a leader. So it doesn't matter if I am the manager or not. I think there's a lot of things I can do as a leader. And to me, that philosophy, I think, is shaped by two different dimensions. So the first one is serving people. I think it's so important to really look at how can I make a person's life better. And I'll give you just a few examples of my current job. I'm not the manager, but then I get to have new colleagues in my team, or even like we work with freelancers. And so I think my job as a leader is, I think, okay, what would I have loved to have when I started a new job? So I would have loved to have someone that guided me. I would have loved someone to make me feel psychologically safe to ask questions, even if I feel like maybe this is a stupid question. I just want to be able to ask that. So that's serving other people and also my clients. Like, how can I make it easier for them? If I know they have a lot of tasks going on here, what can I take off their table that, of course, is suiting how I help them to make their day-to-day better? And I think you can look at this both for clients and also for colleagues. So I think that's one. And then the second one, it's proactivity. I think leadership is a lot about being proactive. And that comes again back to this, okay, I can only be a leader if I am the boss. But actually, there's so much that we can do, even if we're not the manager. So to me, being proactive, I think, is a key component of who I am. I always want to make sure if I can do something, I'm not going to wait for someone to tell me, please go ahead. But like, I want to take the initiative, of course, always in alignment with the company's values, with the company's objectives. But I know that I have a kind of a funny situation, because I'm also helping my dad with his company, where I take a bit more the role of a manager. And then in my day-to-day job, I am not the manager. So from these two perspectives, I notice how important it is to have people that take the initiative. Otherwise, things get a bit stuck, I feel. Like, I see that from this manager perspective that I am giving the chance to have at my dad's company. But then also as an employee, how can I just improve things, and how can I take the initiative before someone tells me, like, this was obviously something we needed to tackle? And so I think these are the two components to leadership, like serving and also proactiveness.
Oh, I love those. Has this always been the way that you viewed leadership? If you think about when you said Germany was not hierarchical, I was like, really? I would have just assumed that there was so much hierarchy that it would have been just this title, and that influences how people show up. What environments really shaped this idea or view that leadership is about serving and proactivity? Have there been moments where you're like, oh, this is how I want to embody being a leader, and this is what's important to me? Or has it been something that you've read? Has that been developed through real life experience or through learning, theory or trainings?
Yeah, I think probably it's a combination of everything you've mentioned, but then I think about role models as something really important. And just to clarify about Germany, not all companies are like that, but I worked in startups and also at corporate, where the hierarchy was not as steep as maybe in other places. And also compared to Colombia, you always need to think about it as, where are you looking from? Maybe if it's Colombia, there's no hierarchy at all. But maybe from a New Zealand perspective, that's still a lot of hierarchy. But I don't know, because I haven't lived in New Zealand. But there's just this, where are you looking at from point of view? And to your question, if I have always seen leadership like this, I definitely think it has transformed across the years. But I definitely have to think about my boss in Germany, because he was really a person that embodied, inspired me to feel like I want to be like this person. Like, he's just really, serving people. He was a person that would listen so deeply. Like, I just remember being on my one-to-ones with him, and I felt listened to. And this was something that I did not experience previously. And I was like, okay, this person is really taking care of me in this space. And taking care doesn't mean like he's going to give me a yes to everything that I need, but he's just acknowledging things, and he's just willing to have this conversation of where can we find a middle ground to whatever challenges we were facing at that time. So I think role models are very important to how you perceive leadership. And at the same time, I think some aspects come down to how I grew up serving. I think it's just a very important aspect of how I grew up, also how my parents taught me. We always want to serve people and help whenever we can. So I think it's a combination of role models, of course, learning about it, reading about it, coaching, and life experience.
I love that you pointed out for me about Germany. It's like that was the environments that you were in that shaped that view of it's not hugely hierarchical, that we're all on the same level. And I think that's such an important point because everything is perception. Nothing is actually one thing because we might be looking at the same thing and we might be having very different experiences of it. Like what you said, for someone going to Colombia, they might be like, oh my gosh, there's so many layers. There's so many things that I have to go through. Whereas for someone who is in Colombia, this is just how it is. Like it's not actually that bad. It's not actually that many layers. And this is also important in company environments. If we're not even macro on the country level, but actually just go into company environments, it has such a huge impact. Your perception is so hugely impacted by that. Because even just to the point where you said, one manager shaped so much of what you think about leadership. One manager and the way that he showed up and what he prioritized and what he valued had such a huge shaping on what you think and feel about leadership and how you want to then embody that. Being heard, being validated is honestly the most empowering thing that anyone can receive, or just that anyone wants, is you're listening to me and you get me.
Yes, absolutely. And even more when we come from different cultures, because I also had those other experiences where I felt a bit unseen just because people might not have the knowledge of who I am and where I come from. But this person being just so open to understanding and knowing that he doesn't necessarily have the answers. And that's a thing. Before I was like, okay, managers always have all the answers. And if you're a manager, you always need to be able to have the answers. But he was more like, I'm listening and I'm also open to not knowing everything, but we will figure it out. I think role models are very important. And luckily now, because I work with impact entrepreneurs, I have so many new role models, Tash. It's just incredible. And I'm like, wow, there's so much I can learn now from people from Singapore, from Australia, from Hong Kong that really have different elements to the leader that I want to become. So I love this inspiration I can get from different cultures, also from yourself, Tash. I think you're such a role model to me. And just, hey, like, what can I implement about Tash's approach to who I am?
I love that. And I really love that you said, take what I can from people that embodies who I want to be as a leader. And I think that's a really important point to make because I think sometimes people are like, I want to be like them. And so they try and emulate them too much and they lose a sense of who they really are and what their beautiful traits are and their skills and the way that they think, because they think that I need to be more like this in order to be an effective leader, where it's actually, I can take a little bit of that because I like that and that feels really good to me. And oh, I can take a little bit of this and that feels really good to me. And that can help create the bigger picture of who we want to be as a leader, but we don't need to emulate. So I think that's that's spot on. I really love that. And thank you so much. Like my little words of affirmation, love language is so beautiful. So my next question for you is, what skills do you believe are important in leadership? You've already spoken about some of the traits, so being that serving, that proactivity. Are there any other skills that you think are really important in leadership? And what skills are you strengthening at the moment as part of your leadership journey?
Oh, yeah, so many, but I instantly thought about one also as you were just telling me now how important it is to not just emulate things. One skill I believe I can never learn about enough is myself. Like just really going deep inside of who I am. What's that inner fire? What's just my inner ecosystem? Because I feel I can only be a better leader if I know myself enough, and enough is like a thing that will happen over life. I don't think like at the beginning I thought like I would do this one clarity exercise and then I'm done. It's just like over and over again, but we're building on the insights of all of these exercises of coaching that we have had. So definitely clarity about who I am as a person is a very important skill to leadership. Also, to your point, when I have new role models or when I read new books, I know how can I shape that into who I am in the core without just emulating another person. So I think that's one that comes to mind. And then the second one is conflict management, because also growing up in Colombia and being a Latina, I think just the way we relate to one another is avoiding conflict, which really is something I want to break out from. I don't want to do it like this just because I feel there's so much opportunity for growth in conflict, even though it hurts and even though I'm still scared about it at times. But I think managing that is just very important for a leader, because if you never clash with someone, then how do you really adjust like your team dynamics or your client dynamics? And when I say conflict, I think a myth that I have busted is that before I was like, okay, if there's conflict, it's the end of the world. This is gonna blow up. And sometimes it still feels a little bit like that. But then I remind myself, like, you're just perceiving this like that because of the way you grew up. So hold on, don't panic here. And now I'm like, okay, conflict can also be constructive as long as there is a framework to be constructive and not just go and give feedback in a way that is not helpful or supportive either to the other person or me. I think there's always opportunity for growth and opportunity to clarify things. And I think that's a very important skill that I'm working very hard on and probably will work my whole life on. But I think I've come a long way. So I'm also very proud, because also Germany was a big teacher to me, because people there are super direct. I had this contrast, and also the Netherlands, where you don't talk about conflict versus they will tell it to you in the face. And I was like, wow, I just want to cry, but let me just go quickly to the bathroom.
Oh my God, you hate me.
Yes, exactly. It was really very harsh. But I think now with those scars, I can see it with another perspective, and I understand we all just behave accordingly to the way we grew up. And how can I not take this personally and just think about, okay, what do I get from this person's feedback? Of course, if it's super destructive, then I also have the opportunity to say, hey, I believe there's a better way to have this conversation. But there's a lot of room for growth in conflict. And I have experienced that in the past years. And I think that's definitely a leadership skill that I want to keep developing and that I have developed in the past years.
I had to say, even 13 years of my HR career, 6 years coaching, conflict management, difficult conversations, courageous conversations, whatever you want to call it, I still want to avoid it. I still don't want to do it. And it is that skill that it absolutely gets easier over time. And it also doesn't, because who we're speaking to changes over time.
Yes.
So if you're doing it with the same person again and again, that can get easier, because you're like, okay, I'm navigating it with this person. So we're almost both growing and developing together in terms of how I'm sharing it, how they're receiving it, how we then make it constructive. Whereas, yeah, I think there's this myth of, oh, you'll just figure it out. And then all of a sudden, all these difficult conversations will just get easy. Yes and no, because you're talking to different people. And as you said, like, everyone is reacting from their upbringing, from their baggage that they have in their mind around, how did people do this with me in the past? How was I treated in the past when these things happened? And that creates a reaction in this moment. So I couldn't agree more with those two skills: self-awareness, learning more about your strengths, your gaps, who you want to be, who you are. The more that we learn who we are, the more that we learn about what we bring to the table, the more that we can then embody that. Or go, actually, this might be a part of who I was, and maybe this is still a part of who I am, but this isn't what I want to continue being. This isn't a trait or a skill that I want to carry forward with me, so that I'm actually going to leave that behind. And that self-awareness exercise is so important, because often people just keep doing and being who they've always been, and then wondering why things aren't working the way that they want to, or they aren't having the experiences that they want to. Being uncomfortable in those exercises is so important. And you're right, there's not going to be an end point to that, because if we stop learning about that, we're effectively dying, or we're just done.
Yes, exactly.
And I really appreciated you talking about conflict management and being so vulnerable and sharing your experience with that, because I know so many people can relate to that, because I can relate to that. Even though I'm a very fiery, stubborn, petty person, probably terrible of me saying that. I was like, that's not good leadership traits. But Those are like my default reactions. And I know a lot of that is because of my upbringing and also my culture. I was raised South African, which is Dutch direct. You say it how it is. And I've had to really learn how to adapt that. In some instances, that is very necessary. I do need to be very direct. I need to say it how it is. And in other times, I actually need to play with it and be like, actually, is there a different way that I could say this to be able to help get the outcome that I want? And I think that's one of those pieces of conflict management. It's understanding the framework on how to have that conversation, but also knowing the person and how you need to show up in that conversation to get the best opportunity that you can out of it.
Oh, what you're saying is so beautiful because it's like we all have things to learn and unlearn. So for you, the problem is not like, how can I be more direct? That's my problem. But how can I be less direct? And I think acknowledging that the way we do things is not the only way and maybe not the only way to relate to others. I really love it. And I think it's very much needed because we are interacting with people, like not only talking about their cultural background, but just as you say, the upbringing. We're all just so different, and having this humility of thinking, okay, maybe this is my style, but let me try to understand how this person is to then adjust it a little bit just for the sake of having a more constructive conversation that is leading to better results for that person and for myself as well.
Absolutely. And when we're saying adapting, we're not saying sugarcoating, we're not saying avoiding. It's how can I structure this conversation to get the best outcome? And I think that's a really key leadership skill. There is, for those who haven't listened to it, the episode with Jeremy Dean around emotional leadership. I don't know if you've listened to that one,
No,
Andrea.
I haven't, but we'll definitely do so.
Yeah, he talks about strategic emotion versus authentic emotion. And I think we can adapt this to strategic skills versus authentic skills. Whereas, what would I naturally just do in this situation? What can I be strategic about doing to get the outcome that I want? And some might go, oh, that sounds a little bit manipulative because you're not being true. It's no, I'm still being true to who I am. But in this situation, I need to adapt that slightly because if we're just ourselves all the time without really thinking about the impact that it's going to have, the way that it's going to affect people, the way that people are going to perceive that or connect to that, may actually block us and not get us the outcomes that we want. This is where self-awareness comes in. Your 2 points actually connect really well together. If we can build our skill of self-awareness, when we have situations like this come up, we can go, okay, what worked in that? What didn't work in that? What do I actually need to change? What could have given me a better outcome? That loops back to strengthening and developing our leadership skills in better ways.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is something you learn your whole life because there's so much to leadership. We're all in a different point of our journeys, and we can just keep going and developing new approaches to be better leaders.
And also the nuance. It's no situation is straightforward. There's so much nuance that goes with it. That brings me to my next question. What are your biggest challenges to being the leader that you want to be? And what are you currently doing to navigate or overcome them?
I think because I am operating in so many different cultural environments, I just need to keep strengthening the self-awareness because I need to understand what's triggering me coming maybe from different cultural behaviors that I might not consider a standard thing of how I would behave. So that's definitely another aspect of what I want to keep strengthening as a leader.
What would be an example? So you are working with lots of different cultures, lots of different entrepreneurs and founders of companies. Is there an example of where something has happened and you felt activated by it or triggered by it and you needed to work through it?
Yeah, for example, Singaporeans, I think they're also quite straightforward and they really appreciate data and they just want to go quickly to like they want to cut to the chase. I feel like small talk is not necessarily so important as it is in Latin America. This is not necessarily to client relationships, but I've been also part of communities where I'm like, wow, they just want to go a bit quicker to the end point. And so the way for me to adjust, like normally I would have loved to do a bit more of small talk and get to know the person, but I realized they need a bit more to open up. I think that's maybe a trait that I really appreciate about growing up in Colombia. I think I can open up quite easily, but other people might need a little bit more time. So that self-awareness is, okay, just because I can do this a bit quicker doesn't mean that they have to. So I'm just gonna keep going with the natural pace of this community dynamic and see how they open up at a different stage of the process. Actually, that's very similar to Dutch, to German. It's just such a different process to really open up and have this kind of vulnerable conversations. Whereas for me, I really love to have it almost at point zero, depending on the person. So I think that could be an example of that self-awareness, that it's okay, my way is not necessarily the only way. And how I approach this is not the only way to have a conversation. So I also want to be patient. I also want to give people the space to be themselves. And then we can find a point in which hopefully that relationship flourishes to the point where I'm thinking.
And what were some of your mindset thoughts when you noticed that happening, where people weren't really engaging in that small talk or weren't really active in wanting to build that relationship initially? What were some of the thoughts that were going through your head that you had to work through? So some of those mindset challenges that in hindsight, you could later on be like, oh, okay, this is what I can do to develop that. And this is what I could learn. Were there any of those kind of challenging thoughts in the moment?
For sure, because also being the new one, like I really crave that connection, and hopefully it wouldn't take ages to happen. So a lot of my mindset challenges were around like, this person doesn't like me personally, and that's why they're behaving like that. But I was also able to catch that thought that might not be true. That is the way that I am feeling that, but it's not necessarily like this. And luckily, I have also experienced this again, Germany and the Netherlands, where people are just have a different pace in developing personal relationships, and also in the like in a corporate setting, or like just in our day-to-day job. And for me, the mindset challenge and the way to overcome this challenge was just to think, okay, I know because I have lived this before, that people have a different way of building relationships. So what I can offer is, okay, I can open up a little bit. Maybe that will encourage the others to open up as well. If not, then I can just respect this pace and not take it personally. It's not like they don't like me. It's not like there's something wrong about me. It's just about the dynamic that people are having versus the one I think is the one that should happen.
Such a good experience to go through, but also to really reframe your mindset. Everyone just likes to do this differently. And some people don't actually want to have more than, hey, this is the work, let's get it done relationship. And that doesn't mean anything bad either.
Exactly.
And when we step up as leaders of teams, of people, this is probably one of the biggest pieces of work, especially new managers, new leaders. They want to be liked. They want to know that people like them, that people think that they're doing a good job. But we have to be careful of what are we perceiving as likeness. That likeness isn't what we're aiming for. Respect and trust is what we're aiming for. It's going to look different for everyone. So again, like getting to know your people. Oh, actually, this is how they show up with everyone. It's not just me. And being able to challenge yourself exactly what you did. What do I actually know to be true? Is this just my feeling, or is this fact? And so often it's a feeling. It's our own things coming up, our own fear of rejection, or our own fear of not being liked. And we need to be mindful of that so that we don't spiral out of control.
Yeah, my luck is like we're aiming for respect and trust and not likability. That's very, I love it. And I can see how difficult it is to actually let that sink in.
So coming towards the end, I would just love to know, what advice would you give to new or emerging leaders in becoming better and more confident?
I think definitely self-awareness. I think that's, to me, the most important stepping stone, at least to get started. From my perspective of being a leader without necessarily being a manager, I think this has really helped me to understand where am I standing and what can I offer to others. And then from there, learn more about these other skills like conflict management, like what you're saying, like this is about being respected and trusted, not liked. So how can I bring everything that I am to serve the people that I am interacting with at the work? And also, how can I be proactive, going back to those main skills that I talked about, to really be the person that is opening up the way for the growth that we're looking for and for the impact, in my case, that we are looking for. So I think that would be it.
Yeah, I love that. Would you be able to share, how can people practically start building self-awareness? What would be some practical ways that people can start flexing that muscle, maybe some of the things that you do?
So for me, journaling is so important. I journal almost every day because it gives me a lot of clarity of the thoughts that I am having, and also untangle whatever is not being helpful at the moment. I think that's one. And another one is talking to people. I think having those conversations with people, especially people who are very different to myself, have given me a lot of self-awareness, because in the conversation, you will notice what is lighting you up, what is triggering you. And all of those are information pieces about who you are. Like, okay, why is this so inspiring? Or why is this so annoying? And I think just talking to people, going a little bit out of our value systems and talking to persons that grew up completely different. And I've had this a lot because I'm changing countries, and then naturally I'm talking to people that are very different to me. And that has given me a lot of information about myself, and also information about, again, my way is not the only way. So what can I learn from them? And at the same time, what perspectives can I bring to the table that are also refreshing the perspective that the other people are having? So I think it's two sides of the coin here, of having conversations where I understand my way of thinking is not the only way, but at the same time, my way of thinking can really nurture this conversation and can really nurture the perspectives that you're going to have. So these are the two things, two very practical and I think accessible things for all of us to do to start developing this self-awareness, with journaling, with having conversations. This is no secret to you, I am a big fan of personal growth, and really investing in personal growth is so important to me, and I think to leaders, because having the guidance of an expert that is asking the right questions, that is pushing your limiting beliefs, I think it's so important to really further develop and become a better leader, the leader that really embodies your essence and all of those skills that are really going to promote more impact, which is really my main goal as an impact marketer. I really want to drive sustainable development goals impact. So I would say, in summary, those are the three. Like, journaling is very helpful, having conversations with people that are different to ourselves, and then personal growth guided by experts. I think it's very important.
Great ways to build self-awareness. So thank you so much for sharing that. Amazing. I really love this conversation. Before I ask my staple questions that I love to ask all guests, do you have anything that you would like to share with listeners that maybe I didn't cover, or maybe you wanted to dive a little bit more into?
I think I would like to learn a little bit more about this conversation you were mentioning about likability, because I think that's probably a thing that many people struggle with as well. My role as a leader is to steer the project, and how can I achieve that with trust? I really love the trust piece, also serving and also respect, but how do we get detached from this likability piece?
I don't think it's that we can get 100% detached from that, because we're humans. At the end of the day, we want to be liked and we want to belong. And there's that connection with, if you like me, then I belong here, then we can be friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How can I be comfortable not being liked all of the time? Because if they don't like you at all, ever, then they're probably not going to work with you. They're probably not going to want to talk to you or be in your space. So yeah, it's how can I bring myself to a level of comfort of not being liked all of the time? And how can I stay more focused on saying what is necessary or doing what is necessary in order to move us to where we need to go? Because if you think about your clients, for instance, they want their outcomes, right? That's what they're there for. They want their outcomes because they want to get their revenue, or they want to get their results, move their projects forward. So yes, they want to like you. They want to like Andrea is and how she shows up, but they also want to know that you are going to do what's necessary to get them their results.
Absolutely.
And it's that balance of, we want to be connectable or relatable so that there can be a relationship developed, and we want to do what's necessary to get the results, because that's where the trust and respect is going to come from. Because people are not going to respect you if you dilly-dally around the problem and don't address it and don't say what needs to be said, or you avoid saying anything, and then a month down the track they realize, if you had told us this a month ago, we wouldn't have been in this problem. Like, that erodes trust, that erodes respect, and that will also erode likability. And this is coming back to the radical candor model, and this is what I always just connect everything back to. It's caring personally, challenging directly. When we focus too much on likability, we're in that care personally. It's like, I care about them so much. I care about what they think. I care about what they think about me. And so I'm not going to challenge, like I'm not going to say what's necessary. But to build that trust and respect, we want to have that radical candor, which is I care about you, so I'm going to challenge you directly. I'm going to say what's necessary. And we can think about this in terms of our team members, in terms of our clients. I care about you in this project. I care about your business. So I'm going to tell you that this isn't going to work. Or I'm going to tell you that we've gone over budget. Or I'm going to tell you that this idea that we had is actually going to completely flop. You're probably not going to be happy. You might even be a bit annoyed at me because you thought that I was going to be able to do it. But I care about you and your outcomes. And so I'm going to tell you what needs to be told. And this is something that happens over time. And also when we don't have authority behind us, as you were saying, you're not the boss of your company. So there can feel like the sense of, I don't have the authority to maybe say this to the client or whatever it might be. But it's something that we can develop over time. This is a myth that we need to bust, which is what you did in your career was leadership isn't a title. And it's the same with building trust and respect as well. That doesn't by default come because you've got a title. It doesn't by default come because you've got authority. It's, are you doing what is necessary? Are you having the necessary conversations? Are you driving the right results, the right outcomes, and all those things? So like when we start out, that is really hard to do. And it's something that we by default just want to be liked because we might have some imposter thoughts. We might feel like we're not good enough. We might feel like we can't do it. But how can I stay focused on getting the right outcomes and the results for my team and for my people and for my clients? And then what do I need to do in order to get that? Care for them personally and challenge them directly. So it's not a straightforward answer. It's not, how can we not care about likability? It's, can we care more about doing the best thing by our people, by our clients, by our, even if that means that they might not like me in that moment.
Yeah. And I think the conversations we don't have or the work we don't do will speak for itself at some point because it's going to explode. So that's why it's so important to have this constant communication ongoing and really understanding, okay, what might flop and how can I do something about it before it happens? And even if I'm scared about conflict, I need to talk about this because then it's just going to worsen. It's having this snowball effect. So I really love what you're sharing and I can completely see it like in day-to-day life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So to wrap up this episode, I love to ask 3 quick fire questions. First one is, what is the best advice you ever received that's helped you be a great leader?
I think really, this is a Gandhi quote, but I've seen it also with my favorite leaders, be the change that you want to see in the world. I think it's really that because you are challenged, like you're not finger pointing people and saying like, why didn't you do this? But you turn around the question and say, okay, how can I do that thing that I am asking other people to do? Really being the change that you want to see in the world, starting with ourselves, with that self-awareness and with implementing the things that need to happen before they snowball to be a better leader.
Amazing. What is one thing that helps you feel courageous to do scary things?
I am more scared about being stuck than growing. I think that's just enough. I am scared about many things, but I think the biggest fear is just not growing, not developing. So I know like it doesn't matter what I'm feeling scared about at the moment. If I'm not going to grow, that's the worst case scenario. So as long as I'm growing, then I'm just going to go for it. And I think that has been my mantra across these years where I have been facing a lot of uncomfort while living in different countries and developing my career in a way that really delivers the impact that I wanted to deliver. It's just like, no matter what I am feeling, I know like the way to go is action, proactiveness, and just growth. And that's going to be the solution to this fear that I'm feeling.
Oh, that is a good one. And what is one boundary that you uphold that supports you to be your best?
So I think because I naturally care so much about people, I can easily fall into the people pleasing box. So I think to me, boundaries has been a very important one, like understanding, okay, I can be helpful, but when it's being helpful, not being supportive to the overall goal. And so I think this balance between serving people and still setting some boundaries has been a very helpful mindset shift and practice that again I'm doing day by day. Is nothing like I absolutely don't have it all figured out, but I think it's very important and that it's helping me to be a better leader.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Andrea. This has been such an amazing conversation. where can people find you? If they listen to this episode and they want to connect with you, where is the best place?
Please find my LinkedIn, Andrea Cayuela. You will see my name on this podcast episode. I'm always super happy to connect with people. If you're in the sustainability and social impact space, please connect with me. I'm always inspired to learn about people tackling sustainable development goals, and just in general, personal growth is something I deeply care about and I'm so passionate about. And just in general, meeting people from the world is something I love. So please feel free to connect with me via LinkedIn.
And yes, we'll put that in the show notes so people will be able to go directly to your LinkedIn and find you. Thank you so much. This has been such an amazing conversation. And thank you for sharing your journey with us, your ideas about leadership and what you're working through right now. It's been amazing. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. If you have any questions, any feedback, or want to give Andrea some feedback or connect with her, please do. We always love to hear from you. And I will be back in your ears again next week. Hey, that's all from me today. Thank you so much for listening to Lead With Less. It means the world to me if you could take a moment to leave a rating and a review on Apple, or just rate with 5 stars on Spotify. It means a lot to the growth and the expansion of the podcast. And if you know any other people leaders who could do with a dose of inspiration to level up their leadership skills, then please forward on this podcast to them. I would really appreciate it. And as always, if you have any feedback or have any thoughts, please message me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or email. I'd love to hear from you.